back, sports fans, to another episode of the 2315 Sports Show. We're on episode 27. As you can see, if you're watching this, Ethan is taking a hiatus again. He had, I think, vacation Bible school this week, and he was actually helping. So we pulled the big guns in, and my wife Mandy again. So we're going with that.
I'm becoming a regular.
You're becoming, yeah, soon enough. Corey might have some competition. You might have been on more shows than Corey now, so he's gonna have to step up his game too.
Watch out.
Had a couple of champions to crown this past weekend with the College Baseball World Series and the NHL Playoff Stanley Cup. And then we're gonna do a little NBA draft reaction since it just ended today. We're recording on Thursday, so it literally just ended, I think, an hour ago. So we have all the picks. So starting out, we had the Tennessee Volunteers win the College Baseball World Series. Might have been the first time. I don't think it's the first time. It might be first time in a long time that they've won. Usually, another team from Tennessee is very good and usually right where they are in Vanderbilt, but they were nowhere to be seen this year. So it's good to see different winners.
Flipping the script a little bit.
Yeah, different winners, different teams in. Texas A&M also. They have a good baseball program, but I don't know if they ever went to the final, but they did this year. Tennessee actually won 2 games in a row. Best of 3, it went all 3 games. Texas A&M won the first one pretty convincingly. But Tennessee kind of rallied and kept it under control. The next 2 games, kind of lower scoring games. Tennessee was the number 1 overall team all year long. They were just very, very good, kind of juggernaut through the season. And the best team won. So I like seeing new teams. It's good. It's good for college baseball.
See, and I had forgotten that Texas A&M won the first game. I don't know why, but I was thinking it was like Tennessee, Texas A&M, Tennessee. But I totally had that messed up and totally forgot that. So to see them come back, I guess was really good for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Probably the biggest story. Well, I think Tennessee's pretty young. They had a lot of sophomores and juniors, so that's going to bode well for them, assuming they all stay in this crazy college world of transfer portals. It happens in baseball too, so just kind of depends. But I don't know why you'd leave a program that you just won. But heard of stranger things. Kind of the biggest story was Texas A&M coach. He, his dream job or whatever was Texas A&M, said he'd never leave. And all of a sudden, the day after or 2 days after, he's going to an in-state rival in Texas. That is a big slap in the face.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, that's, and I don't know why. I don't know why you would leave a program that you just took to the World Series, unless they're losing a lot. I don't know. That could have been, but even if you don't go in-state, you go somewhere else. That was kind of ridiculous.
Well, and I think what poured salt on the wound was that he was like, this is my dream job. I'm not gonna go anywhere. Like I came to Texas A&M for life, and then 24 hours later, he flipped the script.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's ridiculous. So, but good for Tennessee. Tennessee won. Best team all year, best team in college baseball, and they're done. They're off to a new season. Another kind of big storyline this weekend, or actually, I think it was Monday. The Stanley Cup, NHL playoffs. We had the Florida Panthers versus the Edmonton Oilers. Florida went up 3-0 on Edmonton. So everyone wrote off it was done. Then all of a sudden, Edmonton's the fourth game, they obliterated them. I think it was like 8-2, and then the next game again, they didn't obliterate them, but they outscored them quite a bit. And again, the sixth game, same story. So Game 7 was forced. However, the Florida Panthers came back or got their heads together and won. It was a tough game. So
What a roller coaster of a series, though. Like, in the
yes.
beginning, you were like, the Panthers are going to easily win. Like, it's going to be done in no time. And then all of a sudden, the Oilers come back and give fans hope. And it really was like one of those things that you thought was going to be like the storybook ending. Like, the Oilers were going to come back. Connor McDavid was going to like have a
Hmm.
great game and they were going to win. And then the Florida Panthers. So it's like, not this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, if I was a Florida Panther fan, I would be absolutely sick. Like, that would be horrific. Um, although many other sports, there's been a few that have come back and won. Basketball is not one of them, but baseball, actually, we were a part of that. Cleveland was up 3-1 against the Cubs, and the Cubs came back and won. So it's crazy. It's like a lack of focus, I guess, that happens when you're up that much. And, we can afford to lose one. Oh, we can afford to lose two. And now all of a sudden, you're pressing for game 6 and you lose again. And now your mind is shot. But Florida ended up winning. Good for them. I didn't think they were going to win. I thought Edmonton was going to sweep them 4 games and be done. So, congratulations, Florida. That's their first. And might be many more
Well,
to come. They were the best.
it's like we were talking last week with the Celtics. You know, they lost game 4 and went
Hmm.
back home to win. And it's like, okay, do you give up that win and say, oh, we're good? It's just one win. And so this was kind of like the same scenario, except it didn't go as well for the Celtics. Like it went well for the Celtics. It
Right.
didn't go well for the Panthers there for a while.
No, no, not at all. Um, so that's good. It was two champions, baseball and then hockey. So those 2 seasons are done. So really, we're all that's left is baseball. We do have the Olympics coming up. That's a big thing in a month. Actually, a month from today, yesterday. Um, so that'll be cool. That'll be cool to talk about. A little different. We don't always get that, obviously, every 4 years. So um, I think before we came on the show, we were watching the men's gymnast, and to tell you the truth, I didn't even know men's. No offense to them, I didn't know men's gymnastics was still a thing. Just because you don't see it like in college, like you don't see it televised at all.
You
So
definitely don't see it as much as the girls. I
no.
mean, we watch the girls a lot because I love gymnastics. It's one of
Hmm.
my favorite things to watch, especially when they're in the competition. And shout out to LSU for winning this year. They killed it.
Hmm.
So I'm excited for the women's Olympic trials for the gymnastics. But yeah, the men's is interesting to watch because they do different events. And it's also one that you don't see a lot.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. So really, the biggest other thing that happened so far this week, we had the NBA draft, and we sat and watched this last. We're recording on Thursday, so last night, Wednesday, and I I was always excited. It's always exciting for drafts. It's always fun, but I can say this was the most boring draft I've ever watched in my life. Um, I don't know if it's just because we didn't have I'm not going to say high talent draft class because they're pros, so they're talented. It's just big names, flashy names, things like that.
It's the
So,
flashy names. You didn't have a whole lot of, like, the flashy names that you would be like,
mm-mm.
"Oh, yeah, I watched them in college," or, you know.
Yeah, no, there's a few, but not too many.
Mhm.
And speaking to that, the first 2 picks were both foreign players, and that's the first time they've ever gone 1 and 2. And
France. They're both France, right?
well, yes, They're both
Yes and
from
no.
France. The first pick, his name is, I got it pulled up over here, is Zakari Richesser, I think is how they pronounced it. I don't know. It's French. Um, he is, his school slash club was France, and he is from France. The second one, Alexander Sarr, Alex Sarr, he is from France, but his club was in Perth, Australia.
Oh, okay.
So he played in the Australian Pro League, pretty much. But these kids, so interesting take on foreign basketball. These kids have been playing professional basketball since they were 14 years old, which means they've been going up against grown men since 14, um, just like Luka did back when he was playing.
And that worked out
And
well for him.
yeah, so I see why the NBA is going towards that, because these kids, they're not kids. They're at 18, they're ready. Um, they're ready to go against grown men. Now, there's a little bit of a talent difference, I would assume, from the NBA, from their pro league, but we'll see in the Olympics. I mean, that's what's coming as well. So, um, shout out to France. I did hear though the reason why these French players are becoming more and more that we're seeing is because, so Tony Parker, who is a French Canadian, but he's French. He is over in France,
Oh.
and he has a team. I don't know how old. I don't know as it's pro, but it might be developmental. So he knows these kids, and it's kind of like a pipeline to the NBA. So good for those kids. We saw last year Victor Wembanyama, same thing. 2 years in a row, a French player has gone number one. So hopefully that means the U.S. players figure it out and start dominating in college, because it's time to show up or go overseas and play. For all I care, I don't know. The first USA player was for Houston. That was Reed Shepard out of Kentucky, which I've seen a lot of. We've seen a lot of. Um, he was actually deemed one of the most athletic kids in the draft, which I was very impressed with. And he's the best shooter in the class. And he went to the Houston Rockets. So again, a Kentucky player, last Calipari players to go. So I don't know. With the first three, I'll say my opinion. I don't like number one, but what do you think? Do you think these French players are the way to go, or should they go for the college kids?
I mean, it's hard to say because we've seen a lot more Reed Shepard than the two French guys. So I'm not gonna diss their game or anything like that. They could be the best players in the world. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
because I don't see them. We looked at their statistics, and their statistics didn't really match up with Reed Shepard, Dalton Connect, those guys. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. So it's interesting. You know, they did get Wembanyama, and he showed out. So he was obviously a good pick.
Mm-hmm.
Luca, we talked about, he was obviously a good pick. So their track record honestly has been really good. It's just we don't see those guys as much as we see the college guys. So I think it's really hard for us to relate to them and
Mm-hmm.
know them and know their game and know if they're gonna make it or not.
I agree. So the only difference, Wembanyama had the stats coming over. Obviously he's a freak of nature though. That's a
Yeah.
one of one. It'll never
His
happen again.
alien title is
Yeah, it's perfect.
straight
It's
on.
very cool. It's awesome. And he went to the perfect team, and it's going to write the perfect narrative for him. This guy, the first guy that was taken, and I even said it when he was drafted. This is not taking anything away from this kid, because obviously he's better than me, but he averaged 10 points a game. You're the number one pick in the NBA draft, and you're going to take a kid that only averaged 10 points a game. Okay, maybe you don't need a scoring guard like he is, but or score. Actually, he's a forward because he's 6'9". I don't I don't know. I wouldn't have done that. I actually like the other kid, the Alex Sarr. He had a little better stat wise because he had the rebounds. He's a forward as well. He's a little more athletic, a little bigger frame. But my personally, I would have passed on actually the top 6. Uh, my first one was the Donovan Klingen from UConn. He's I don't know what's wrong. How can there be something wrong with a 7'2", 282-pound kid from the U.S., played at UConn and won 2 national championships back to back? I I don't understand. I I mean he averaged 20 points a game. He averaged, I think he might have averaged a double double. If not, it was close. And they dominated. And it was all from him. He was the anchor on the best, like the coach said, actually, Hurley. He said he's the anchor on the best offense in the country and the best defense in the country last year. I don't know how you pass on him. But they did. He went 7th to Portland, and good for Portland because I think he might be the best one in the draft right away. The others are going to take time. So um, I like what San Antonio did at 4. They took Stephon Castle, who is from UConn as well. He's a freshman, but he won a championship. He's been
I
there.
have
He's
to
done it.
shout out his chain because
Mhm.
his last name is Castle and his chain was a castle, and that's awesome. Like, way to be clever. You know, people
Mhm.
sometimes just like write their name or whatever.
Yeah,
No, he was clever with it.
that is cool. That is cool. He definitely showed the swagger. And they said he's the best defensive guard in the draft. So defense wins. We had our first, not our first ever, but G League Ignite player, Ron Holland II, go to Detroit, which Detroit needs a whole lot of help. So it didn't matter who they picked. They could pick whoever they want. And then right away again at number 6, Charlotte. I don't know why you're passing on Donovan Klingen again, but they chose a kid out of France again. So France really showed up in this kind of top 10-ish. We had San Antonio trade the 8th pick, which they got a lot of capital for it, I think, but they traded to Minnesota, and they ended up taking Rob Dillingham, other Kentucky player. And Minnesota, me and Ethan were talking about it today. They won the draft this year. Um, they have Cat, they have Anthony Edwards, they have Mike Conley. Now they got Rob Dillingham, who can go out and get them a basket whenever they want.
Do you
I
realize
like it.
he could have been traded for a 7th grader? Like, they got a
Mm,
2030 and a 2031 pick, and that, like, adds up at the youngest or whatever, like a 7th
7th
grader.
grade. That's ridiculous.
Isn't that crazy to think
I
about?
if I was the Spurs, I'd have picked him. I would have kept him
That's
because
crazy to think about.
yes, I agree. That is really weird. But I'm not gonna. They're the only organization I'm not gonna doubt because they probably know some overseas kid that's playing at 14, 13 right now, and by 2030 he's gonna enter the draft and he's gonna be awesome. Like I don't know. Um, Rob Dillingham to Minnesota is a good pick for Minnesota. Um, Memphis Grizzlies taking Zach Edey, who was the most dominant player in college basketball. He did average a double double. We don't know how his game transfers to the NBA, but you can't teach 7'4" and 300 pounds. So he's going to be fine, especially in that offense. He doesn't have to be a shooter. He's a rebounder and defensive machine. And then we had a kid out of Colorado rounding out the top 10 going to Utah, which makes sense because Utah is going to see them a lot. So top 10 picks were very lackluster as far as draft status, but it's the draft. Um, Going through it of all the picks, I'm not going to go through them all. It'd take too much time. Who is your who do you think was the best fit? Not necessarily best player, best fit.
I don't really know because I don't know a lot of these guys. I'll be honest. I'll give you kind of like my takeaways more so.
Mhm.
I'm really surprised Dalton Connect fell where
Mhm.
he did. I thought he was going to pick sooner. I really kind
For
of thought it was a cool.
context, for context, Dalton Connect went to Los Angeles Lakers at 17.
Yeah.
Lakers
So
got
I
a
thought he
steal.
was going to go before that.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely thought he was gonna at least hit top 15. Not that 17's too far out of that, but it still surprised me. Um, I liked Chicago's pick just
Mhm.
because the moral of the story. The kid gets to play at home, which is really, really cool. And then a big thing that I noticed was the emotion. And I
Mhm.
like that. I appreciate that because I
Mhm.
don't want to see a kid like go up on stage and be like, I knew I was going to do this. Like, I'm the best. Like,
Yep.
I want you to go on stage and your dream just came true. So we
Mhm.
saw a lot of emotion from a lot of guys, and I really liked that. I appreciate that because it shows that they know like how big that moment is.
It's huge. It's the biggest day of your life at 18 years old, 19 years old.
Yeah.
I was going to say my best it might not be a best fit. Best reaction definitely goes to the Bulls guy. I mean, the kid, Matas Buzelis, was born and raised in Chicago or grew up in Chicago, one of the two, because he is Lithuanian, I think.
Mhm.
And he played for the G League uh, Ignite, and he his reaction was priceless. He's playing for his hometown team. He cried, but his brother's
Oh my
reaction,
gosh.
he was bawling. Like, and then afterwards, the family had the caps on and said, "Go Bulls." Mom said, "You got a good one." But like, best reaction of the whole draft. Good
By
for the
far.
kid. I hope he pans out for sure. Um, the only other, I don't think there's a story in the first round that I really cared about. The other good pick Minnesota took was 27th, and it was Terrence Shannon Jr., who's out of Illinois,
Mhm.
who was nasty in the tournament. He was nasty in the year. So Minnesota easily won. Um, Kind of a big story that Kyle Filipowski didn't go first round.
That surprised me too.
We saw a lot of him. We're North Carolina fans, and
Mhm.
he's a typical Duke player that we hate. Um,
But they've made NBA careers out of it. Look at Grayson Allen.
Look at JJ Redick.
Mhm.
Now he's a coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, had a great pro career too. Um, so he ends up going. See, and that's what I don't understand. Kyle Filipowski wasn't good enough for the first round, but he was the second pick in the second round. You're telling me I don't get that. I don't buy it. Um, but of course, we'll get to the main point, probably our last point of the draft, that the Los Angeles Lakers ended up picking up Bronny James and the 55th pick. Um,
Which is a shock to nobody, I don't think. Like I
no, it's not. And if if the stories are true of what was happening, I'll say this because I was watching the or listening to the kind of show, and one of the announcers said he had GMs texting him, telling him that what's his name, Rich Paul, is that
Rich Paul.
Rich Paul, which is the agent that
Mhm.
Bronny James has and LeBron has, LeBron's friend, said he was calling the other teams, telling them not to draft Bronny because if they do, he will go to Australia and play. That is manipulating the draft. That is not a wholesome pick, in my opinion. That is not it. It's not a good look. If it's true. If it's not, then fine. If it's true, I can't get on board with it, to tell you the truth. And on the other hand, I don't know how that's not tampering in a way. But he's there. He's going to play with his kid. That's that. I don't know. I don't know your thoughts on it, but
I mean,
I'm not a
obviously the
fan.
story is cool.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
playing with your son is any parent's dream. Like, that is absolutely any parent's dream. And LeBron, whether you like him, don't like him, whatever, he is one of the greatest.
Mhm.
You can't deny that. So, in my opinion, he has a little bit of like a leverage per se with
Sure.
his team to say,
Mhm.
like, I really want this to happen. Like, I play and give my all to you guys. Like, can you
Mhm.
like slide me one? So I don't have any problem with that portion. If it's true that, Rich was kind of manipulating the whole draft system, like didn't want anybody else to draft them, then I don't like that. I think you should let things naturally happen. Because let's be honest, fate is going to be fate. And if it's meant
Mhm.
to happen, it's going to happen. Personally, I don't think anybody would have taken him before then. I honestly think it was a safe bet that they were gonna get him, and not
Mhm.
to, like, diss him or diss his game or anything like that, but he was out for his heart condition, so that's a
Mhm.
whole chunk of time that we didn't see his game, and then when he came back, we didn't see a whole lot of, like, the standout all-star, and I'm not saying that he can't be, because he absolutely can be. I mean, your dad's LeBron James, for Pete's sake, like,
Mhm.
basketball's in your blood. But we didn't see a lot of it like we did the other guys in the draft. So I honestly think that the Lakers had a safe pick there. I don't think anybody was going to. He only
Yeah.
worked out for the Lakers and the Suns. And God knows what the Suns are gonna do, honestly, because their whole organization's kind of messed up right now and they need some changes. The only way I could have seen him going before is if LeBron was a package deal. Like if
Oh,
LeBron would have came out and said, like, whoever gets my son, I'm going with
yep.
them, he would have been picked top 3 probably.
He would have been number 1.
Yeah.
Which, if you're a dad, why don't you manipulate it that way? He don't have anything else to prove. He's won his championships. I mean,
Yeah.
he's fine. Go get your son a guaranteed big money contract and a number 1 pick. But again, that would have been really shady,
Right.
in my opinion. I mean, this is shady, but if it's true, but that would have been worse.
I do hope that Bronny can make his own name. It's always hard for like kids of all-star
Mhm.
athletes in any regard, basketball, football, whatever.
Mhm.
It's always hard for them to kind of like step out of that shadow. So I hope he does get to do that. And I hope we do get to actually see like what he has.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It it won't happen when LeBron's in the league, but once he retires, then he'll be his own player. I personally think he's gonna take a couple years to develop anyway.
Mhm.
Um, he I think the Lakers, again, not taking anything away from him, he's obviously better than me, but I think it was a sympathy pick. Obviously, if LeBron wasn't there, he wasn't gonna get picked there. I don't think he was gonna get picked the whole draft, to tell you the truth. I think his best bet was to stay in school or go play somewhere else, go play overseas, whatever you wanna do. But obviously, when you have a name that carries, like LeBron James's kid, then you have perks. And you know what? Good for you for, using your perks. Not that you need the money, not that you need anything, but um, this is the first time in basketball that a father son will play together in the same era. So obviously they wanted that. So that's fine. Um, in baseball, there's been quite a few that have played together. And actually, Usually, I think in all the cases, the son was the better one. The one I'm thinking of in particular was King Griffey Jr. He was better than his dad, and he had a better career than dad. So his shadow was, um, it was gone. But I do think, I think the funny thing on some of that stuff is that I don't know how as a dad you wouldn't enjoy that. Like, but I'd also say as a dad, like, please pick something else. If I was LeBron James, pick a different sport because we all know how the media is, and he knows how the media is. They're relentless, and they're not going to stop,
They're ruthless.
especially with one of the greatest of a generation.
Mhm.
Michael had kids. Michael Jordan had kids. Not a single one. They played college, a couple, maybe a few, but not a single one went pro. They were businessmen. Like, they made a smart decision, or go into a different sport. Like, if you want to be your own, go in a different sport. But
I think the downfall is there's always gonna be that comparison. But honestly, that's not even with family. I mean, we
mm-mm.
hear every single
Yes,
day, like, is LeBron Kobe? Is LeBron
yep,
Michael? Is Anthony Edwards Michael? Like, you always have that comparison. So it kind of sucks that they can't just like be themselves and play without being compared to, but that's what it is. It's always been that way.
it always will be, and it always, in my opinion, it always. I don't think it always should be, but it should be because that makes the sport more entertaining. Like, because then you get people in an argument. Like, I don't think LeBron's the greatest. I don't. But a lot of people do, and that's fine. A lot of people don't think Michael or LeBron's the greatest. You know, people that are way older than us, might not think. Well, the ones that are alive might not think that, but there's a lot of generations that believe Michael is the greatest, and that's because he is. Um,
Well, and it kind of feels like your generation too, like what you saw. Um, so I'll
sure.
be the first to say that I do think Michael is the greatest. However, I never saw Michael a whole lot.
Hmm.
So I always grew up as Kobe as my
Hmm.
favorite. Um, and still to this day, like he's my favorite because I watched him. I watched him his pretty much whole career. I didn't watch a lot of Michael.
Hmm.
So it kind of depends on what you've seen. I mean, I'm sure there's young kids that are like Steph Curry is the
Sure.
greatest because that's what they've seen.
Sure. Sure. I would have no doubt. Um, yeah, that's a whole discussion. That's what keeps it going. Each generation is going to have their greatest,
Mhm.
and some are going to overlap. Um, the three we're talking about kind of overlap each other. So, I mean, you're going to have the greatest of the 90s, the greatest of the early 2000s, and then the greatest of later 2000s, I guess. So, but they all played. I don't, I actually don't know if LeBron went up against Jordan. I don't think he did
No,
at the
no way.
Wizards. It would have only been at the Wizards, and I don't think he did. But Kobe and Michael did. So,
And then Kobe and
um,
LeBron did.
yes. And I will say Kobe's the closest thing to Michael that there has ever has been, and there probably ever will be, just from his work ethic standpoint. But that's a conversation for a different day. Um, again, though, boring draft to me. And
Mhm.
actually, I said this to you yesterday. ESPN like ruined the whole thing. They were on the guy that was getting picked
Mhm.
every time, and I'm like, well, don't do that. Like, you're giving it away to everybody. So I didn't like that either. But definitely, football holds the top draft like look so far. So
I'm
I don't
more
know.
so of a football girl, so I always like
Eh,
the football draft better.
there's there is next year though, and next year's basketball is a little more talent rich. They're projecting. So We'll see. We'll have a big fight for probably Cooper Flag out of Duke. Maybe the Bulls will do bad enough and they'll get it. However, that's it. We are done for today. If you guys want to go and like and subscribe on YouTube, you can follow us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and then follow us on TikTok as well. Thanks again. Peace.